Y'all, on today's show, we have megastar Phil Ford, basketball legend. He has done it all, y'all. He was a superstar in high school. He was a superstar in college basketball. He was a megastar in the NBA. And then he went on to just outshine himself as a coach, college coach, NBA coach. He did it all, okay? All I know is that he's my friend and I get to claim him as such, and he's an amazing person. He is just as great of a friend as he is a basketball player and coach. And I'm really, really, really thrilled to have this conversation with him today about belonging in sports, what that looks like with teamwork and why that's so important and how that translates into so many other aspects of our lives. So let's get into it with my friend and basketball legend, Phil Ford. Friends, we have a special treat for you today. We have my personal friend and NBA legend, Phil Ford, up in the house. And Phil, I can't tell you how excited and how honored I am to have you here today to talk about this really important topic on belonging in sports, something that you know quite a bit about. And so I'm excited to get right into it with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on. And it's always good to see you and Mark. You guys are great friends.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. I'm honored to have you as a friend. We met last year, and we joked that we met in a bar. But really, what happened is, we were in a swanky place, a restaurant that had a lounge upstairs, and I was there with my partner. You had a friend there, and we happened to be sitting at the same corner. You were sitting on one side of the corner, and I was on the other side of the corner, and we were just minding our own business. And I was just hanging out with my husband for date night. You were with your friend, minding y'all's business, and the owner came around and knew all of us and introduced us to one another, and later said to us, that's Phil Ford, one of the most famous basketball players of all time. And I had just not put it all together. I had noticed that people kept walking up to you and were, fanning and everything. But I was just enjoying, your company and had not put it all together.
That meant a lot.
It was an instant connection, I think, that we all felt. And at the end of the night, we're like, we all got to hang out again because we shut the place down, I think.
Exactly.
The last ones there. And so we've been friends since. I went to NC State, and we live in an area where there are three big basketball teams 20 minutes apart from each other: NC State, Carolina, and Duke. And they are all big time rivals with each other. But, you won me over, Phil, regardless. You were Carolina, but you won me over.
I appreciate it.
No, we joke about that.
You won us over, too.
It's all friendly. Sometimes those fans don't get so friendly, though, I can say that. I know one of the things that we immediately connected on, you and me specifically, Phil, was that you grew up in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And Rocky Mount is right up the road from where I grew up in Smithfield, North Carolina. And it's literally just an interstate. You hop on the interstate and you go about 20, 30 minutes or so. And both of those places are places where everybody knows everybody kind of thing. And you and I connected immediately about our experiences and some similarities, but also obviously some distinct differences there. But both of your parents were public school teachers.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, with both your parents being very education, very school-oriented, how did basketball come into the picture for you?
When I was 5 or 6 years old, I was the type of kid that ran around the house knocking things down. And my mom's brothers were athletes. And they suggested to my mom to buy me a ball and bat and put me out in the backyard. And I was hooked on sports ever since then: football, basketball, and baseball. And it was a happy balance between athletics and education in my home because of my parents. My mom was a French and English teacher, and she thought Dean Smith was the dean of a school at Carolina. She didn't know he was the head basketball coach there. But, it all worked out. I played football, basketball, and baseball up until the ninth grade. And the guy hit me so hard in the ninth grade, I said, I'm never playing football anymore. And I played baseball and basketball through high school. And then, of course, I concentrated on basketball.
With playing all those different sports, what did those childhood experiences teach you about sportsmanship?
Well, it's amazing when you're on a sports team, how it's kind of like you become a family. I look back on my little league teams, my shoestring teams. The guys that were on your team, for that hour or 2 hours, you got like you're all family. And then when you see each other, in school, it's a little different feeling that you have for someone that you're on a team with. So I think there's a special bond between people that are on teams. It's kind of like, I don't like to compare athletics to war, like foxholes and stuff like that, right, because war is such a serious thing. But if it was anything close, to a bond that you depend on someone else, and, you would go to battle with that particular someone else on your team, it's, I think you get that feeling in athletics.
Yeah. I always talk, Phil, about my interest in belonging and my research in belonging really stemmed from my childhood. And the first place that I felt that, and I played sports also, and I felt that connection there. Yeah. But one of the places that I really felt a connection really deeply also, apart from sports, was in the theater. And that's kind of what it reminds me of that you're talking about. Like you all come up together, right? You're all performing in some way together, whether it's on the stage or on the field or on a basketball court, right? You're performing together in some way, and you all depend on one another. You can't just have, a whole play of just a soliloquy. Maybe you can, but most of them involve a lot of different characters, right, and a lot of different people, right, and they all rely on one another and they play off one another, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so that's what it makes me think of. And even with war, I know that there are different things at stake, but there's shared experience, and something about having this shared experience that everyone is living in the same space, and we're all looking at things maybe through different lenses, but we're all in that same shared space and that shared energy together. And that's something that will bond you for life. It's almost like families, right? Even if families are dysfunctional, as most of them are, there's a certain kind of bond that we have to one another, like it or not, because we were looking at the same things. So there's something that happens.
And you succeed together and you fail together.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
That's the bond too that you would share.
And that's what I always said about theater, that, when we had a great show, we were all doing it together. If it wasn't the best show, we all rise together, we all fall together. But your dad was a sharecropper's son. And, and so he went on then to get a master's degree. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you
remember.
Well, you've said too that you were a daddy's boy.
Yeah.
You said that before, and that you admired him very, very much. And so I'm curious, Phil, how did your relationship with your dad really shape the person that you are now and even shape you as an athlete?
Well, as I told you, my dad couldn't play athletics. He had to work on the farm every day. And he allowed me to play athletics. He allowed me to go to basketball games when I was really little with him, football games, baseball games. I remember the day that he died, I just kept remembering me as a little boy, and him hitting me ground balls, and sometimes the ball would pop up and hit me in my face, and he would yell out, "Beat him, ball," and that would just make me more determined to stay down on it and get the next one. But he was an athlete. He drove the athletic the activity bus for his high school that he taught for the basketball team and the baseball team. And he would let me, go with him I was a little elementary school. He let me go with him. So, he had so much to do with me being an athlete. And he was just at all my events, he's a little different than my mom. My mom hardly ever came, but he was at most of all my events. And I just admire him for being a sharecropper's son and going on to get his master's degree, which I think at that time for a black person in the early 50s, to get a master's degree and being a sharecropper's son was really difficult. And he did that and had a beautiful family and raised 3 kids. And, one was a doctor, a dermatologist, and my younger sister has her master's degree. And I'm the black sheep of the family. He and my mom met in graduate school. They have their masters. So I guess I'm the only one that didn't go on, but I have my undergraduate, but that's all I could do.
Well, you did more than just that, okay? You did more than just that. So I want to talk about that undergraduate experience because you've shared with me before, but I'd love for you to share openly here about the very famous Coach Dean Smith, Dean being his name, not his title, as your mom thought, but about how he recruited you. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about, you really did have your pick of where you could go.
Well, my mom counted the letters that I received from schools, and it was well over 300. And my senior year, I narrowed it down to 8 schools. And at that time, the schools would come into your home and speak to you and your parents and your family to talk to you about coming to their school. And Coach Smith was the latest school, the last school, and his staff to come into Rocky Mount and talk to me. And a lot of the other coaches were telling me how much I was going to play and how much I was going to start. And Coach Smith, I was a top 10 high school basketball player in America. And he looked me right in the eye and said, I'm not sure where you'd fit in. You may have to play junior varsity. And I think that's where my mom started to fall in love with Coach Smith.
What was it about that sparked interest in your mom?
She said that we could trust Coach Smith, that a lot of other coaches were promising me a lot of playing time. And I had some success as a high school player, but they didn't know what kind of player I was going to be in college. And if I went to Carolina, and if Coach Smith wasn't promising me a starting position or promising me starting time, he wouldn't be promising anybody else there. So it would all be fair, and no one would be given anything.
You know what I hear from that too, Phil, is that I define belonging as the experience of being seen, embraced, and or celebrated. And, oftentimes I give the example of athletes actually who are really, really, really celebrated, right? It's like, yay, everyone's clapping for them, but people might not actually see who they are behind the play, right? Behind the skills. And what I'm hearing from you is that Coach Smith kind of flipped the script from what you were hearing from other coaches and from other schools. He said, I don't know that we can celebrate you.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to celebrate you in this way, but what we're going to do is we're going to see you first. Yeah. We're going to let you come in and we're going to see who you really are in this space and what you're made of, because it's very different.
Yeah. Right.
And so for me, what I'm hearing is that shows the power of someone wanting to really understand you and see who you are before they just start clapping for you. And that is actually a celebration of who you are by giving you the space and the freedom to explore like who you're going to be in that space.
He wasn't going to give anyone, but it's not only me, it's everyone that he recruited. He never promised anybody playing time. He never promised anyone they would start. He never promised anyone anything. You had to come in and you had to earn it. And, everybody that's ever played for Coach Smith had to earn it.
So the great irony, though, is that if I remember correctly, you ended up being the first freshman
to start for him.
First freshman to start for him that wasn't on the junior varsity team, right?
Exactly. Uh-huh.
So how did that come to be?
There's a player, a guy named Ray Harrison, who was in school and took a medical leave my freshman year. And had he been in school, probably wouldn't have started. So, there was, I guess you can say it was a not an injury, but a medical situation that I was started. But when I went to UNC, I went with the idea that I wasn't going to start. I wasn't expecting to start. I just grew up a Carolina fan. When Charlie Scott matriculated at Carolina in the mid '60s, I was going to all black elementary school. And when Charlie Scott went there, everybody at my elementary school wanted to be the next Charlie Scott and play at North Carolina. And I just became a big Carolina fan. And then when my family got to know Coach Smith, we just fell in love with him. And I just wanted to go to Carolina. I just wanted to play in Carmichael Auditorium. I just wanted to go to school at Carolina, go to classroom, go to school there and walk down Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. I was just eat up with Carolina. I really wanted to go there.
And that energy was infectious over there. I can say that even being on Hillsborough Street over in Raleigh and not on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill, I can say there is something infectious about the campus over at Carolina. So tell us more about what that experience was like playing under Coach Smith's leadership.
One of the best decisions I've ever made in my life was when I chose to go to Carolina, associated my life with Coach Smith. He was tough. Carolina practices were, every drill was timed. You sprinted everywhere. There was no loafing. Everything was hustle. I mean, Coach would get upset. It was a funny moment when he passed. A lot of sports writers from around the country were getting in contact with me through Steve Kirshner, sports information director at Carolina, and a lot of them were saying, how mild-mannered and easygoing Coach Smith was. And I said, "You've never been to practice." It's true. When visitors came to practice, he wouldn't let the visitors sit on the lower bowl. He made all the visitors sit up in the upper bowl, because if he got on someone in practice, this is the type of guy he was. He didn't want visitors to see him getting on a player, because he didn't want to embarrass a player. Have you ever noticed in a game, Coach Smith would rarely get upset and raise his voice publicly at a game? Now, in the locker room, that was something different. But he never wanted it publicly to embarrass a player.
There's something to be said about that level of respect that you're getting from your leader openly like that.
Well, we all knew that he really cared for us, not only as basketball players, but as people. And that's something that goes so far. When we left Carolina, he would still stay in contact with us. He would still want to know about our families. I mean, he was an amazing man. I think he's the greatest coach to coach any sport, but he was just a great, great, great man also.
What did he teach you about sportsmanship?
Respect and loyalty were just two of the things that pop out in my head when you ask me that question. There was no one on our team more important than the other person. We had this thing when I was in school, we traveled commercially, and we had so many first-class seats on a commercial flight. Well, my sophomore year, I was an All-American, but there was a senior on the team who didn't play a lot. He got to sit in first class, and I sat in the back.
Was that by design?
Yeah, because the seniors, they were the leaders, they'd been there longer. And just because I played more didn't make me more important than a junior or senior who were there, who were older than I was.
So kind of letting you know your rank in a different kind of way. And then that's really also, when I talk about belonging, that shows an embrace of really the older players as well, and teaching you how to create space for other people. Lets that ego not get so out of control, which I know can happen in college basketball, especially in North Carolina, where we're really big into college basketball.
Yeah. And respect, to talk to respect and loyalty. Coach Smith was as loyal as any person that I've ever met in my life, almost to a fault sometimes. But if you were with him, you were with him.
What were the ways that would show up in terms of his loyalty?
He just made us feel, Mona, that he always had our back, no matter what. he would put his face out there for us. Now, when he got us in his office, that's one thing. But when it went to the public, he always had our back.
So what would happen now in his office? I'm hearing about Coach Smith in the locker room.
That's between Carolina basketball players and Coach Smith.
And so there's your loyalty.
What happens in the locker room stays in the locker room.
That's your loyalty. All right. So he taught you some loyalty well, didn't he? Well, so then you were there then for a minute, and then went on to be the second pick in the first round of the NBA draft. Mm-hmm. That's not a small thing. That's not a small thing at all. How different was it than, Phil, playing in the NBA as opposed to playing in the ACC? We've talked about now you went from high school being, top 10 nationally to going into college and being told you might not be on the varsity team. And then obviously doing very well there, going on to the NBA. What was that difference?
Well, at North Carolina, believe it or not, we played a pro-style game. I get a lot of people walking up to me talking a lot of times they bring up an offense we ran called four corners. And we did do that a lot when I was at Carolina. But what people don't understand is when we played four corners, we also averaged about 80 points a game, which is a lot back then for a college team. That's 40 a half. So we played a pro-style game. We like to push the ball up the court. We like to play man-to-man defense. We changed up plays. We changed up defenses. So a lot of things that we did at North Carolina was my pro coach didn't ask me to do anything that Coach Smith hadn't already taught me to do, is what I'm saying. Like my rookie year, I was NBA Rookie of the Year, and the year before me, another player from North Carolina, Walter Davis, was NBA Rookie of the Year. Mm-hmm. So, the change wasn't that drastic, I says, with some other players, but it was different because you're playing against somebody great every night.
The skill set was already clearly developed, and that's not always the case. That's definitely not always the case. You see some folks who are really shining in their, in college teams, and they go to NBA and can get swallowed up by that. Mm-hmm. So you were prepared skill-wise. I'm also curious about the culture. What was the difference in the culture?
Well, that was a big difference because every night, 3 and 4 nights a week, you're playing against someone that's probably as good or better than you are. So mentally, it's just to be prepared every night so many more times than you did in college. For example, college, you may play 30, 35 games. When I was in college, in the NBA, you have 82 regular season games. So when you get halfway, you've already played more games you've ever played in your life, and then you got another 41 to play. So that was one thing you get used to on top of the travel. We didn't have private planes when I played. As when I coached in the NBA, we had private planes, but you travel commercially. It was an NBA rule that if you travel on the day of a game, you had to take the first flight out, just in case there were cancellations, that you would have time to get to the city you were going to. So it was a lot of mental adjustments as well as physical adjustments. But, when you're playing basketball and doing something that you loved and have done all your life, you can't complain about it.
And what about the relationships that you formed there?
You have a special relationship with the guys you're playing with. A lot of that has to do with how much time you spend with them. In the NBA, you spend a lot of time with your team. Because you imagine you're traveling 41 times during the regular season, and that's not even counting preseason or postseason. And then you're practicing, and then you're in the hotels together, you're eating together. So there are special bonds that are developed in the pros, just like bonds that are developed in junior high, bonds that are developed in Little League. It's something about a team that brings people together. Like you said, you win together, you lose together. You get a great review together, you get a bad review together. So, it's so much involved there that are similar.
So much has changed, I think, in recent years with celebrity. Whereas in the 60s, 70s, the players were individuals, right? But they were really part of a team. You'd have that standout player, but you still saw them as part of a team. Now you have like these big celebrity players, and I'm wondering how you think that might have shifted the culture, if at all, in sports.
There's so much money involved now, and you and I talked about it many times. It doesn't create happiness, but it does allow you to do things for your family. There's so much money involved now that things have just gotten kind of out of whack with me. I wouldn't be surprised sooner or later in basketball, we're going to have $100 million a year guy, So, when you have that involved, the dynamics change a whole lot.
Yeah. I'm wondering how you think that might be changing the dynamics like within the team itself.
I would say the last 12 or 13 years has been the big jump with the addition of the NIL and amateur athletics, the transfer portal in amateur athletics. I do believe it's harder to coach now because one, you don't know who's going to be on your team. You don't know whether you're going to have this guy next year or that guy next year. Usually freshmen came in, you would have them at least 3 or 4 years, but now you have no idea who's going to be on your team. So, I'm sure the dynamics and the bonds of teams are probably changed, but to be honest with you, with me not being there, I try not to comment on things that I'm not around, but outside looking in, I can kind of see where some problems could arise.
How are we going to create community, right? That seems cohesive. And when we have these big standout celebrity players, how does that impact not just community, but also like the interpersonal relationships?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you got like quarterbacks in college football now. The great quarterbacks are making $2.5 million. You've got kids in high school with NIL deals. And for people who don't know what NIL is, name, image, and likeness, where a college player or high school player can get paid now money for their name, image, or likeness. And, it's in high school. There's a player in North Carolina that had an NIL deal in high school. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy that they're getting paid. We should have been getting paid a long time. But I just hope that, it's done right. And I just hope that, it works out.
A lot of players were being taken advantage of.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's why they were leaving college and going to the pros.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, we're in this society, Phil, where everything is just so black and white for everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say, I don't think that's the way to go, folks, in terms of saying, well, this is the right way and this is the wrong way. It doesn't work like that. You. There are reasons why, why we now have NILs for people that are in high school and who are in college. If they weren't being exploited to begin with, then this wouldn't be happening. There's also a consequence that comes with that.
Right.
You mentioned coaching. You coached for, 12 years?
Right, and 7 years in the NBA.
Yeah, and 7 years in the NBA. How did being an athlete in the past, during that era, coming from the family that you did, educators, all of these past experiences that you have, how did that impact your leadership style?
As a coach, I always thought that, number one, I tried to, like Coach Smith, I tried to never disrespect someone. And I never took for granted that a player should do something, Like you said, you never know where a player is coming from. But, I just tried to treat everyone with respect. And I was very fortunate that, I just really didn't have any bad kids that I was associated as a coach. I really believe on any level, if a player thinks that you can make them better, they're going to listen. Now, I think, maybe the reasons are different, from a junior high or a pro player, the reasons may be different why they want to get better. But I think deep down inside, every player, no matter how long they played, wants to get better.
And we've talked about also, community. What are some of the ways that you developed community with your teams?
I kind of call that chemistry, Mona. And every coach and everybody has their own opinion. I kind of believe that kind of develops itself, chemistry. I think you can teach a culture, like a culture at Carolina was play hard, play smart, play together, have fun. But the chemistry on the team among themselves has to be something that's developed going out to dinner, has to be something that's developed playing pickup, has to be something developed during losses, had to be something developed during wins. So I kind of think that develops on its own, but I could be wrong. Like in a play, I mean, I would think I've never been an actor, but you can, develop a culture. You can talk about what you want to be and how you want to go at things and how you want to develop things. But as far as how I'm going to react when another actor says this and another actor says that. And, I think that's something that you have to develop on your own.
I think what I'm hearing from you, there's a certain chemistry, but also people have to nurture those relationships, right? Things like you were saying, like playing pickup, going out to eat, how you hanging out together with your wins, hanging out together with your losses, like spending that time. People then nurture those interpersonal relationships, but also, as a team. But there's something that you're doing too. So you're saying there is a certain culture, at Carolina in terms of what the expectations were. What are kind of your expectations of the team that they knew? Like, what if we asked your team members what the expectations were that you had, or, as far as culture, what would they say, you think?
Some nights the ball wasn't going to go in. Some nights you were going to make bad passes. Some nights you were going to not run the play right. But every single night, that's what I'm talking about as far as the culture is concerned. Every single night, you're going to lay it on the line and play as hard as you possibly can. That's there no matter who's on the team or who left the team. That's the culture. Now, the chemistry, who's going to take the most shots? Who's going to get the most rebounds? Who's going to set the most screens? I mean, that's just something that I think kind of develops over the course of a season or over the course of a preseason. But that culture is something different. The culture is, they're going to play together. They're going to play smart. They're going to play hard, and they're going to have fun. And that's the culture. But the chemistry, I think, is kind of something that's different.
Right. And when you're teaching that culture to folks too, when we kind of circle back to those three elements of belonging, seeing, embracing, and celebrating each other, what I'm hearing from you is that you're teaching them to do that with one another, pay attention to one another, accept one another, have that loyalty, have that respect, and then, celebrate. And celebrate, can also mean it's not always a party. Celebrate means we're acknowledging the experiencing that we're having together. Yeah, and that could be even with the losses too.
Exactly. And, that's something that like freshmen coming into certain schools have to kind of get used to that culture, because in high school, you just don't have a culture like that because, number one, you don't have the type of games, the big time games on television. You don't have the competition night in and night out. You don't have the bullseye on your back. So that's something that they have to learn, that culture. Yeah. But that culture is never going to change. But that chemistry on the team, it may change from year to year.
Yeah. You've talked in the past very publicly, I think, about your struggles with alcohol in the past that you had, and the support that you received from your family, the support that you received from your spiritual beliefs during, what was a very difficult time. Can you tell us more, Phil, about how that impacted your life and your relationships during that time?
It really showed me how blessed I was in my life to have the support that I've received throughout my life, through my struggles. And until I turned my life over completely and became a Christian and put both feet in the circle, as I like to put it. I struggled, but I've been very blessed to have family members and Coach Smith and teammates. And, a lot of people don't have that in their lives. And I've had that in my life for so many years, co-workers that have really pulled for me. And I've just been blessed that it's been quite a few years now. And I'm as happy as I've ever been in my life, as you know, we talked about.
Yeah. And how have you seen your relationships change since then?
I think they've gotten better because I'm a better person. I think I'm a better person now. I think if I had chosen to go back into coaching, which we've talked about, that I've turned down some jobs, that I would be a better coach. But, life is good. I've got these people in my life that I'm very, very blessed to have in my life. And they never left me. They've always been there by my side. Coach Smith was one of those people, that was there by my side. And, I could just start naming former teammates and family members. And, it's just amazing, the support that I received is very humbling.
And also from yourself. I mean, you stood by yourself during that time. And I've seen people do this, and the relationship with self changes drastically for many people. And I'm wondering what that has looked like for you.
I can't say that I did it on my own, but I can say that I kind of just tried to hang in there and keep going, getting in the batter's box. And, sooner or later, you're going to get a hit. And with the support that I've had with friends and, like I said, teammates and family members, and it's just been overwhelming. And I couldn't have done it and gotten through tough times in my life without them.
We can belong back to ourselves again and to like your true spirit of who you are, right? And having the support of community and having the support of interpersonal relationships can help usher us back to our true nature and who we actually are and who we are evolving into. And that is a gift to be able to have people around us as we, again, kind of usher us back to our authentic selves and who we are. And I love having a non-drinking buddy because, I don't consume anymore.
I tell you, all of a sudden I've become the designated driver for my buddies these days.
Phil, I do want to ask you my favorite question that I ask everyone at the end of every episode is, what does belonging mean to you?
Belonging means I don't want to use it as a crutch, but it's always good to have people that that you can count on as teammates. Belonging to a team. And, you could call a team, or you can call a family a team, you can call a city a team, you can call so many things a team. But, you depend on each other. You share good times, you share bad times. You can be yourself. You don't have to put on airs to be accepted, which is very important. To not belong to something seems like it would be very, very lonely and difficult times, a struggle. But when you have that support and you have those people you can run things off of, and, when you win together and you lose together, it's a blessing in a life.
There's something very sacred about having a group of people in your life who bear witness to each other's lived experiences.
Yeah.
It's very sacred and very special.
Right.
Thank you so much, Phil. Love having you today. Thank you for being here for this conversation.
Love
you, Big. Can't wait to see you. Can't wait to see you. We'll get together soon. Love you so much, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. All of the show notes and links can be found on my website at drmonolora.com. That's drmonanour.com. Throughout most episodes, you'll hear me referring to the belonging model that I developed, which is represented by a belonging life map that helps you explore areas in your life where you feel more connection and areas where you might feel more isolation. And you can get a free copy of your own belonging life map on my website. Again, that's drmonanoor.com. If you like the Belonging Reimagined podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review. That can help more folks find us and keep more episodes coming. Until next time, I'm Dr. Mona. You're right where you belong.